Hello and a very warm welcome to this webinar, 4 Steps to Living Your Purpose at Midlife. I'm Lizzie Paish, Life Transformation Coach to Women at Midlife, and I'm so delighted that you found your way here because I've got something really exciting to share with you today. So I'm going to be sharing with you these 4 steps, and they're all about how to follow your own direction and purpose without feeling guilty about letting everyone else down, because I know that's one of the things that really is on the mind of so many women that I start working with. And how to stop putting yourself last on the list, which again is really common. How to feel the sense of fulfillment that you've always craved and finally live true to yourself. So that's what the purpose of these steps is, to help you to do those things. So let's dive in. Because at midlife, it's really common to feel restless and dissatisfied with the status quo, that it's time for something new before it's too late, because we still have several decades of life left to enjoy, of hopefully good health and energy, and we really want to choose to spend them well, and I encourage you to do that. Up till now, maybe it's made sense to focus on others more. Maybe you've been raising a family or something like that, but not anymore. It's important that we look within and we take this time to really get to know ourselves and make sure that we're doing something that feels fulfilling for us, because we really don't want to look back on our lives and say, I was never really true to myself, which is something that is one of the most common regrets of people looking back over their lives. So why should you stay for this web class? This webinar is for you if you're feeling restless and dissatisfied at midlife. Maybe you've got an empty nest, maybe you're single or lonely, bored, worn out, or all of those. Maybe you just desperately want to find a new direction for your life, but you just don't know what it could be. And perhaps you dream of making a contribution to the world and feeling that sense of fulfillment that you haven't felt yet. And maybe you feel stuck in a life that's meeting other people's needs while your needs are ignored, and you just don't want to go on like that. Or you feel guilty when you consider focusing on you. Maybe you don't know how you can possibly make changes in your life for that to be any different, but I'm going to show you how you can get started making changes today. Because the real problem underlying all of this is that you have no idea what you've really got going for you, and you can't see beyond what you currently think is actually possible for you. So you think things can't change the way you'd like them to, or that you just can't see a way that that could possibly happen. But I'm here to show you something different. So as a result of what I'm going to show you today, you can get in touch with what you really want for the next stage of your life, and you'll know how to start achieving that life of fulfillment and joy without being held hostage by other people's expectations. And you'll know how to escape the issues that are keeping you limited and stuck. You'll start creating a life that you can really get excited about. So this is for you if you just secretly know that you hold the keys to your own transformation and you're ready to get started. So let me just tell you quickly a little bit more about me. I've been running my own business for several years now. I'm in my 50s. I work flexible hours and I have plenty of time for doing what I love and being with my family. I run events, retreats and things in the UK and abroad, and I just feel like I'm master of my own destiny and I decide what I want to do next. I'm less stressed and have more fun than ever. But it hasn't always been like that, because 5 years ago I was a teacher and school leader, stuck in a job that no longer fulfilled me, and I had no idea what else I could do. It seemed like teaching was all I knew, but I was becoming really miserable, just doing all these tedious admin tasks that seemed pointless, and I was getting fractious and grumpy with the children. It just wasn't how I wanted to be. So I felt I had 2 choices. Either I could just continue to struggle and moan my way towards retirement, which was still a long way off, or I could figure out another way. So I decided to do that. I started my first transition business, which was as a freelance teacher, and I started to work my way out of teaching. And that business is still flourishing alongside this one. But most significantly, I got support with my mindset and I started to see myself differently. I took the plunge and invested in myself and trained as a coach. And I realised that I was creating my own opportunities. And I felt this new excitement and enthusiasm for life. And then suddenly it began to click that this journey that I've taken is one that so many people are searching for, but they don't know how to start. Because loads of people said to me when I was leaving teaching, "Oh, you're so brave. I wish I could do something like that." And then they came up with a list of excuses why it just wouldn't work for them. But it's not like that. They could do that too. So for the past 5 years, I've been creating the life that I love, taking plenty of time to exercise and enjoy the outdoors. I took a group of women to Nepal on a trekking retreat. I have time to visit my daughter at university, watch the shows and musicals that she performs in and directs. I've had more time to and headspace to kind of help and get involved with local community groups and organisations. And I just want to show you how to do the same so that you can create a life that you love. And looking back, I can see that there are 4 key things that I realised that enabled me to start creating this fulfilling life. So the first is this. The first step is to understand that you are not a victim of circumstance, that you create your own experience and you can take control. So without doing this, you feel helpless and you have to wait for circumstances to change before you can change. And quite often they don't, so you stay stuck. And there's just this helplessness of being a victim of circumstance that, it feels like there's nothing you can do about it yourself. And it's just not true. Because although it often looks as if you can only behave one way given your circumstances, you can actually find plenty of examples of others behaving differently given those same circumstances. And so you start to move from this limitation mode into possibility mode when you realise that you are not a victim of circumstances, that you don't need to wait for the circumstances to change for you to do something different. You can then access inner resources and creative solutions and have this kind of receptive mindset for something new, that when you think the change can only come from out there, those just don't seem to be available to you because you're not looking for them. So let me tell you about Jan, who was a client of mine who was really stuck, and she felt because of her circumstances. She'd had mental health problems all her life and she knew the mental health system locally inside out. But she wanted to create something new in her life. She had this sense that she was ready, but she was arguing with me. "Oh, you don't understand. I'm this. My brain is different. I need all this different support because otherwise I can't function properly." In other words, the circumstances, so she thought, made it impossible for life to be any different. But I just knew that wasn't true. I knew that couldn't be true because that's not how life works. And so over a period of weeks and months, we worked together and she started to see something different about where her experience was coming from. And she realised that she could access something new in her. And as she did so, this sort of started to drop away and she just started to create new circumstances in her life. And now she's in a job that she loves. She's actually taken a master's degree, and before she just couldn't hold down a job for long at all. But she's removed herself from mental health services altogether, and she's experiencing a freedom and more happiness than she has for many, many years. So, it's such a wonderful thing to see that transformation. So let's have a look at step 2. Step 2 is to identify the stories that you repeatedly tell yourself and see them for what they are, stories. Because if you don't do that, if you believe that those stories are real, then you have to act as if they're real. It's all you can do. And so you just continue repeating this same behaviour. You keep telling yourself these stories, and so everything turns out the same. So realising that our version of the world and how it works is entirely our own. It's created inside of us. And some stories that we create are closer to reality and work better for us than others. But anywhere where we're struggling, it's really worth looking and noticing what the story is for us. Because as you start to notice your stories and see that other people have different alternatives to them, then you can start to see that there might be alternatives that could serve you better if you started to tell yourself something different. Once you just see that something is a story, that it's not just the truth, it can just start to shift on its own. And when I work with clients, this is one of the first things that we start to look at is, how does that look to you? What's the story you're telling yourself about that? That's just always looked like how it is. And stories are multi-layered and complex. They link into other people's stories. You're playing a role probably in other people's stories as well. But the quicker that you start to spot these stories, realize that they're not just reality, then you can make a decision whether to act upon them or not, rather than being stuck feeling you have to act in a certain way. And then you can find yourself discovering new stories and new ways of looking at the same situation. So let me tell you about a client of mine called Jenny, who came to me with this story. My partner is a narcissist. He always has to have things, everything, his own way. And, she portrayed him as entirely selfish and uncaring. And it was a very compelling story. It really was. I could really imagine what this guy was like. He always chose what they watched on TV. He was the one that decided what they'd do each day. He woke her up in the night to rub his aching back. His family always took priority over hers. He gave her such a hard time about her driving that she'd given up and sold her car. But once she started to realise that her own behaviour had encouraged or maybe even caused some of his habits, she quickly turned things around. She'd been telling herself this story about him, acting as if it was real, and then behaving like a kind of victim of his behaviour, and then he treated her like that because that's how she was behaving, and it was just this sort of vicious cycle. Within a month she was her own person again. She was living her own life, doing her own thing, and her partner was also perfectly happy. In fact, he was more relaxed and at ease with her than he'd been before too, because she was being more herself. And that was so beautiful to see that, when we come back to being who we are, it has positive impact on everyone around us. So let's have a look at step 3, which is to identify others' expectations and desires for you and hand them back, leaving room for something new. So if you don't do that, then you're constantly looking out to see what others expect. And then you feel bad when you don't meet other people's expectations. You might make increasingly exhausting attempts to meet their expectations, avoid the bad feelings that come with not meeting their expectations. And the truth is that often we've made up what we think other people expect anyway. It's not always coming from them. So, this is a really tricky cycle to be stuck in. So let's take a look at that. We are not responsible for the happiness of others. That's the bottom line. We cannot actually make other people happy or unhappy. We can't make people feel a certain way. It sometimes seems as if we can, and they think we can, but it's not true. And often we're going about trying to do it in the wrong way anyway, like in Jenny's story that we've just seen. We can have more impact by living a fulfilled and vibrant life ourselves than by constantly scurrying around trying to keep other people happy. So let me tell you about Karen, who's another client of mine. So Karen's husband expected things to be a certain way. He'd come home from work, and if there was mess around, if the kids were behaving in a certain way, he'd be really, he'd fly off the handle. He'd get really cross with her, and why hadn't she done this and why hadn't she done that? And she was really busy trying to keep him happy, and it was exhausting, and it actually wasn't really working, because we can't make other people feel something. His stress or unhappiness when he came home from work was actually nothing to do with the mess or the children or what she'd done or hadn't done, or whether the bacon in the fridge was out of date. It had nothing to do with it. It was all inside of him. And while she thought it was her job to keep him happy, she was making these exhausting attempts, and he was just fed up because of all sorts of other stuff. And he thought it was her, but it wasn't her. Once she realised that this was a story, that she had to keep him happy, that there were certain things she had to do to keep him happy, that he was telling himself a story about how things had to be, then she kind of was able to step back from all of that and look at what she really wanted. And when she started becoming truer to herself, things started to settle down. She found herself a new job, which was absolutely what she loved. She'd been stuck in a story before that she couldn't do that because, she needed to be at home trying to keep everything together to keep him happy. But now that she's happy doing what she loves, she does what she can to keep the house in order and do what needs doing. But she knows it's not her responsibility to keep him happy. And his moods come and go just like they did before. And she just realizes that she doesn't need to be responsible for that, to feel that she's responsible for that. And actually, as she is becoming more her own person, he's starting to settle down too. And so, there's this wonderful knock-on effect that isn't necessarily what we expect to see when we start to focus more upon ourselves. So let's take a look at step 4. Step 4 is to start taking action, even if you don't feel ready. You don't know exactly where you're heading, and it's a bit scary. Because you will never feel completely ready. You're here watching this because you are ready in some way. If you wait to have everything 100% secure, confirmed, direction totally clear, everything nailed down, the chances are you'll never ever even get started. Because life is a journey and we're creating it as we go along. It's not like there's somewhere one correct place to get to and one specific route. It's an adventure and we stumble across the next step once we're moving. But if you never get moving, that just can't happen. And there's this misunderstanding that you need to be brave. You don't need to be brave to start something new. You just need to know how life works. That the next thing emerges as you move forward. If you look back over life, you can see where this is true. We don't go in a straight line from A to B with everything totally predictable. I wasn't ready when I started my new direction and I didn't know that it would work out. And, my business and my life are still evolving. Things aren't perfect and they never will be. That's the whole point. It's a journey. We're always on the journey. And to embrace that and enjoy the journey itself is, it's a transformation just to see that, to take that new perspective. So let's just recap on those 4 steps. So the first was to understand that you're not a victim of circumstance, that you create your own experience. Step 2, identify the stories that you repeatedly tell yourself and replace them with new ones, or at least stop seeing them as reality and realize that they're stories. Step 3 is to identify others' expectations and desires for you and to hand them back. And step 4 is to start taking action, even if you don't feel ready. So that's how I created a new way of living at midlife, and I know that you can too. It's a simple process of just seeing things differently, and then this possibility mode opens up. And as you can see, one of the absolute keys to this is to start taking action, and you need to do something different from what you've done before. So here's a suggestion for how to straight away take your first step. Because we all know that when this moment's passed, maybe you'll just switch off the webinar, go and do something else, and you can just be back to what you were doing before. So if you've heard something here that's resonated with you, I encourage you to take action. And here's how you can take immediate action. I've got an online course called Permission to Be You, Taking Steps to Live Your Purpose at Midlife. It's all online and it's just £17, and it builds on this webinar and helps you to discover what you can do next to start taking action into this next exciting phase of your life. And if you sign up for that course, then you get a bonus one-to-one discovery call with me, which means we can get together and have a conversation about what's keeping you stuck, what you'd love to see happen in your life and how you can make that happen. So I really encourage you to take that action and sign up for the course. You can click the button below the webinar and I'll give you a link a little bit later on as well. Of course, the alternative is that you do nothing and you just notch this up as another useful video I saw, which is so easily done. But if you've watched this much of this webinar, if you've got this far, there's clearly something here that's speaking to you, and I encourage you to take that further. There's something here that can be really transformational for you, as it has been for lots of women that I've worked with. So please don't stay stuck any longer. It's time to move on and take that action. So if you've tried getting unstuck before and you find you just fall back into old habits and ways of thinking, or you've reached that point where you just know something needs to change, maybe you're willing to hear something new and consider a different approach from what you've tried before, and you're committed to making yourself the priority in your life, not at some point in the future, but right now, before it's too late, then go for it. I really encourage you. There's a button to click just below and you can get started on this next stage of the journey. I really love seeing the results that people can achieve despite all the stories they've told themselves to the contrary. In 3 months' time, or maybe even less, how would it be to be free from doubt about what direction to head in and be engaged in something new that's fun and fulfilling with a sense of purpose? And wouldn't it be wonderful to know that you have everything you need and so you can feel confident and be pursuing your dreams? Wouldn't it just be amazing to no longer be listening to that voice of self-criticism that seems to get in your way every time you get started? And wouldn't you just love to be free from others' expectations, pursuing what you want from life without guilty feelings? Or to see your relationships improve as you start to blossom into who you really are? I've seen that so many times. And to feel like the creator of your own life rather than the helpless victim is such an amazing feeling. So I offer this program and this coaching because I've seen that it helps the women that I work with to achieve all those things and more, often with immediate results. This is what I absolutely love to share. So if you'd like to join this online program, Taking Steps to Find Your Purpose at Midlife, then you can visit lizziepaige.com/taking steps or click the button below and that will take you straight through to buy the program. As I said, it's just £17, a small investment for the life-changing transformation that you will start on this course. I really hope that you'll take me up on this, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you.